Hey, welcome to the video. Today is the second video in a series of videos dealing with retrieving your Wi-Fi passwords in a Linux environment. In the previous video, I showed you how to do that using the CLI or the command line interface. Today, I'll show you how to implement what we've done in the previous video in Python. Check it out.
To write our Python code, we will only need two libraries. SubProcess for Python to be able to interpret command line interface commands, or shell commands if you like, and the re library, which is used to recognize patterns in strings. We will use that to filter out or to pick up the passwords and other pieces of information we need from our text files. Remember, in Linux, the passwords sit in a text file. Now, the information we will be picking up from these text files are these fields here. So I stick them in a separate list. It's ID with the equal sign, type with the equal sign, interface name, SSID, key management, and PSK equals. Now, the reason I put equals behind that is because that makes it unique, because ID will probably be in that text file a number of times because there's also SSID, for example. Anyway, so that is why I put the equal sign here. So those fields we will need to pick up from our text files. Now, the first thing to do is to build up a list of commands that will go into each and every one of those files and pick up that information. So the first thing I do is I write a function that's called build commands that will give me a list. And this list will hold the cat instructions or commands that I will need to open up my connection files. So it will return a list, and each element in the list is a long string, which is a sudo cat command. So this is the folder, and this is the name of the first file. Of course, we need to do that for every file in this folder. So the first thing to do is to find out what are the files in that folder. So that we do by running the ls command on that folder. So the folder name, I just stick in a variable called folder, and the command I'm trying to run is an ls command. Now I am in the etc folder, as you can see, right, in the etc folder. So I use sudo, so I create an f string to run that command. Now how do I run this command? You do that by using the SubProcess library and the popen, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, to be honest with you. You use that command to run a command in the shell. So the command we want to run in the shell is this one here, so sudo ls. I put shell to true because it is a shell command, and the standard output, this is the trick, the standard output by default will be your command line interface. Now, of course, you don't want the output to go to your command line interface. You want the output to be piped into a variable. So that is why I use pipe here, which effectively stores the value of the output into this variable proc. So proc holds the output of this command. Now the output of this command, as you remember from earlier in the video, was in my case 4 file names. In your case, it will be however many Wi-Fi networks you've been on. So this proc will hold the output of a command. Now what I want to do is to turn the output of this command into a list where all the elements, or where each element is one of those file names. So how do I do that? Well, the proc object, from that I use the standard output. I use the read function to read that standard output and then decode it to text, because the output isn't actually text. Now once it's decoded into text, I can then split it using the new line character, because it so happens that the standard output stores this information with a new line character between the elements. So this gives me a list of these names. That will be the first one, that will be the second one. So the next step is then to create the cat commands, and we store those in a list as we pointed out here. So creating the cat command, I'm going to use a list comprehension here. So for every X in the network list, X is just a name I give to each element in the network list. So for each element in the network list here holds the file names. Okay. So for each of those file names, I'm going to create an f string, and this f string says sudo cat, and then it picks up the folder variable up here, and then it has the file name from this network list. So you do that as a list comprehension by putting this all in a list, as you can see with the brackets here. So that will give me all of the instructions. Now I'm applying a Boolean trick. What does that trick mean? In Python, if the first part's already not true, then Python will not execute the second part. So that is a quick way of checking for errors, for example. So if there are empty list entries, which there might be, okay, then I don't want this part of the AND to happen. I don't want to have an instruction where the X is empty. So to avoid that, I put the X in front and use an AND, because if the X is empty, this is empty is false, and therefore AND will never be true, and therefore it doesn't execute the second part of the AND. We will apply that again a bit later on. But so what this gives you is this list. I've only listed the first two here. In my case, there were 4. So I will have a list of 4 elements, and each element will be a cat command. So in the next video, I'll show you how to then start extracting information when the cat command has been applied to my files. See you then.